And I wanted to talk to you about a very important medication that's on the market. Everybody's kind of talking about it. It's called semaglutide, also known as Wegovy or as Ozempic. It has historically been prescribed for type 2 diabetes patients, but it's been in the news because a lot of people are hailing it as the miracle drug for weight loss. That finally we have some medication on the market that's going to solve all of the weight issues that we face as a society. And I wanted to give you some background. Now, first of all, this is a very, very important medication. There is no doubt about that. It is a game changer in many, many different ways. It is a GLP-1 agonist, and it works in a few different ways. It can help regulate blood sugar, the insulin response, even like how much we eat or satiety. But there are some caveats to that, and it's not a panacea or anything even close to that. And I just wanted to give you a few examples of the personal experience I have because I actually ran the medical weight loss program that we have, and we utilize this medication, but we really utilize it as a bridge, meaning it is very important and can be very helpful for people who have tried, different modalities to lose weight, have failed, might have hormonal imbalances. Your typical doctor's advice: eat less, move more, whatever the hell that means, because it could literally be the hardest thing in the world. When things like that don't work over a period of time, these medications could be very, very, very important. But we always saw it as a bridge to a broader change, and that's through lifestyle. So, when we really dive into things like nutrition and movement and sleep and what we spend our time and energy on, these are the biggest movers when it comes to metabolic health, weight, and these are the dials we want to be using to our advantage, right? And in that sense, the semaglutide, we utilize it, but we also want to do that with coaching in mind to help people make these changes that are sustainable. That way, this medication could be used for 3, 6, 8 months maybe, and then you could taper off of it, and you have these really strong foundation to go forward after that. So that's the general idea. Now, I want to tell you a story about a patient which I think is very, very impactful because this patient came and saw us. He had a lot of trouble losing weight. He was overweight. He wanted to lose around 30 to 40 pounds. He tried a bunch of things. He had a really hard time with losing that weight. And this was last year, actually. And Wegovy was actually going through a type of shortage. So we were going through his insurance, but it was hard to find at pharmacies. And I worked with this client. We did blood work first. We looked at hormone levels. We looked at a lot of different biomarkers. And when I worked with this client, he was waiting to get the Wegovy. In the meantime, we started just kind of working on some fundamental things on regards to, how to approach nutrition, how to approach movement and sleep and stress management. And I want to show you a little bit of the changes that we saw over time, because this is, I think, kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier. I'm going to pull this up. So we do something called an in-body scan at Next Health, and this is how we track people. Now, it's not as accurate as a DEXA scan, but it is very, very precise, meaning we could actually see real changes over body fat, muscle mass, weight, visceral fat in a very precise way with this. And so we like it. It's very easy to use. It's much easier than a DEXA scan. We use the highest end in-body scan possible. So this is what we use. And just to show you, so when he started this program, you could see some of his markers right here. So this is actually his latest one. I want to show you the previous one. When he first came to us, this was around April of last year. He had 52.6 pounds of body fat, which translated into about 26.8% body fat, 82 pounds of muscle. He was weighing 195.9 pounds. He wanted to lose around 30 pounds of fat. And so I started working with them, gave him some basic things to work on. And the most important things were around nutrition. And this wasn't, once again, about restricting yourself or counting your calories or anything like that. It was basic stuff. Some of the pieces of advice I gave him: limit what you eat later in the day, meaning don't make dinner your biggest meal. Have a few hours between your last meal and when you go to sleep. Prioritize the amount of quality of sleep. Be consistent with when you eat. Have a system for the type of foods that you're eating. Don't just leave it up willy-nilly on the day and when you're hungry to decide. You're up against like the forces of ultimate capitalism, and they're going to get you if you leave it up to just your instincts in that moment. So you need to create a system, and we worked on those systems, and it really became the snowball effect for him, where we started small, being consistent. And I really told him to eat as much as he wants to, as long as it's real food. Like, nourishing real food was the key to everything. And that's what keeps you full. And the more you do that, the more consistent you are with that, the less you're going to crave the junk food, the less you're going to crave all these other unhealthy foods. And that's what we prioritized, and over time he saw significant changes. And I'm going to show you this in-body scan again real quick. And so here are some of the changes. So essentially what happened was he ended up not ever getting the Wegovy because it was just taking too long. And the changes he saw, you could see here, had at his peak, he was sitting at around 26.8% body fat, which was around 52.6 pounds of fat itself, and he slowly started going down, slowly but surely. By the end of the month, he was trending downwards. This top number here is his muscle mass. You can see his muscle mass was actually increasing. His body fat from April to August went down by almost 5 percentage points. It continued to go down, and came to November, he had 14.6% body fat, 24.9 pounds of body fat. So he had literally lost half his body fat, over 25 pounds of body fat, and he had cut his visceral fat in half. This was independent of any sort of medication. And this is sustainable changes. This wasn't restrictive dieting. This wasn't anything, super significant. He maintained his muscle mass, essentially. He actually gained a little bit. He kind of, went in waves. His actual weight went down from 195 pounds to 170 pounds. So super, super significant changes we saw there. Reductions in everything we were tracking that we wanted to see better. Body fat percentage, body fat, visceral fat, his hemoglobin A1C improved. So all of these markers that actually correspond to improved health outcomes, cardiovascular health outcomes, metabolic health outcomes, even things that affect things like cancer progression, neurodegenerative disease progression, all of those markers improve. And my point here is that a lot can be done with lifestyle changes. And it's not that we only want to rely on lifestyle changes, but without a doubt, modern healthcare, especially in America, does not know how to utilize this. A doctor is not trained on this. I went to medical school. I know how it works. I'm not a licensed physician or anything, but I know how it works. And physicians, the incentive structures are misaligned. They have very limited amounts of time, and they know very, very little about nutrition. They know a lot about how to give medication, which can be appropriate, especially for acute issues. But for chronic issues, lifestyle changes are king. We want to use medication when appropriate. But I really think that emphasizing some of these small steps that people could take that go beyond restrictive dieting and, eating less and moving more, which once again could be extremely difficult. And we want to take blood work into account. Sometimes, changes in vitamins and minerals and optimizing hormones makes a huge deal. So there's a lot of different variables, and medication can be used, and it can be appropriate. But I just wanted to give this story as an example of what is possible for people to do with things like nutrition and movement and sleep, and also just give some background on the medication like semaglutide, which, by the way, can be helpful, but we do really not know the very long-term effects. There are some studies showing that once you stop, some people do regain all of that weight. There are some things that show that you might be losing a little bit of muscle mass. We're still waiting on a lot more evidence. There's no such thing as a biological free lunch when it comes to medication, so there are drawbacks to a lot of things, and then there's also expenses associated with that. So Wegovy, semaglutide, Ozempic, whatever you want to call it, can be very, very helpful. We see it as a bridge for something more significant. Focus on the lifestyle changes. Work with somebody who knows how to impact behavior change in general. That would be a health coach, actually. And usually, when you have a health coach working alongside a physician, that works best. You have the interpretation of blood work, you have guided changes, and that's really what's going to drive positive long-term health outcomes. Any questions about this at all? I love talking to people about this. I work with a ton of people on these matters. I run the longevity programs at Next Health, so this is my jam. Feel free to message me on Twitter, DM me. Happy to answer any questions at all. I hope you found that helpful.